right, well, welcome to our book talk. I am going to be covering pages 149 to 170 today. That's two different chapters, notes and in the field. So let's start with notes. If we look at our book, so this chapter is a little bit more about Norman Bowker, who we read about. Remember, we read about him, and he's just traveling in circles around and around the lake in his neighborhood or his town, right? So this is the backstory to that. This is how they came to that moment in time. And it just kind of lets us know that Norman Bowker was struggling, guys. He was super struggling. He didn't feel like he had any kind of meaningful use for his life after war. He didn't feel like he fit in anywhere. He didn't feel like he could maintain a job. He had his family, and his family was caring and loving, but he just couldn't find his place anymore. It was almost as if the war had killed him, even though he survived. And he kind of lets us know that. He says, it's almost like I got killed over in Nam. Hard to describe. That night when Kiowa got wasted, I'm on page 150. When Kiowa got wasted, I sort of sank down into the sewage with him. It feels like I'm still in deep shit. So he's got self-pity, anger, irony, guilt, and indifference. He writes this letter to our author, and in his letter, he's kind of talking about war, and he goes through all of those feelings, right? It just lets us know how complex and how hard it is for these guys to deal with the war once they're back. How to assimilate back into society is not something that's easy. So it turns out that 3 years after he wrote this letter to our author, he hung himself. He hung himself at the YMCA while he was on break from a basketball game. He just couldn't take it anymore. And so that's what he did. So Tim listens to his suggestion about writing a story about this. He says, everybody's writing these glorious war stories. Write a story about what really happened. Write a story about a guy who goes to war and just comes back zapped and can't fit in anymore. Write a story about someone who has PTSD. That's what you should write your story about. And so he says, all right, you know what? I'm going to do that. He's writing a novel called, what was it called? Chasing Calcutta? Look. Anyways, it's a real novel. It's another novel that he wrote. And going after Calcutta. And he decides that he's going to write a chapter in that novel called Speaking of Courage, which is the one we already read. And he writes it, but he changes it because it has to fit the narrative of the story. And when he changes it, he has to take out Kiowa. He has to take out that shit field. He takes out all these things that made the story what it was. And it was kind of, whenever he finished writing it, he sent it to Norman Bowker. Norman Bowker looked at it and he's like, yeah, well, it's not horrible, but like, where is everything? Where's Vietnam? Where's Kiowa? Where's the shit? At the bottom of page 153, right? So our author says, you know what? I have to rewrite that. So he rewrote it into what we read, Speaking of Courage, and he put it into this book, giving us the details. Here's what really happened. Here's what really happened while we were there. And he included all of those horrible events. It makes it very clear to us at the end of this chapter, though, it was not Norman Bowker's fault. Because remember, Norman Bowker felt like it was his fault that Kiowa had slunk away. Because I want to make it clear that Norman Bowker was in no way responsible for what happened to Kiowa. Norman did not experience failure of nerve that night. He did not freeze up or lose the Silver Star for valor. That part of the story is my own. Interesting. So as he told that story of Norman Bowker, it's like he put Norman Bowker in that place, but I have a feeling that our author was the person who tried to grab him and he slipped away. I think it was our author because he says that the other guy did not freeze up or lose the Silver Star for valor. That part of the story is my own. He feels like he's the one who lost that. So that's an inference that I'm making here. I think that the purpose of this chapter was really to kind of let us know like what people in war really do go through. Now the next chapter is in the field, and this is still talking about that same moment in time, right? So at the beginning of this chapter, we open, and the platoon is looking for Kiowa. So the ship field flooded, Kiowa disappeared. Now it's the next morning. They're all looking for his body because they need to send his body home, and they're searching through this muck, and it's just awful, right? They just want to hurry up, find him, and move on to the next thing. So they're all looking everywhere. They're digging through the thing. You've got lots of literary devices in this chapter that just really made things stand out. It says that he was folded into the war, which is interesting since he was folded into all that mud. The rain was a war and you had to fight it. So that's what they all had to do that last night. Jimmy Cross is our lieutenant. He's determined to find their man, so he's going to do whatever it takes to find Kiowa's body. They're all out there searching. He's reminiscing about Kiowa, and he defines Kiowa, if you look at the top of page 157, as an intelligent, gentle, quiet-spoken, brave guy. So while he's out there searching, he's writing this letter in his mind to Kiowa's dad, because he has to let Kiowa's dad know what happened. And he changes it throughout the chapter, So he starts off with, he's going to say it's all his fault because he's in charge. He's the one who had them camp right here in this shipfield. He is the reason. And he's saying, I should have known. I should have looked around. I should have defied the orders, and I should have taken us to higher ground. But I didn't, because I just followed orders. I was acting automatically. And he thinks he's going to put all of that into the letter. Then he changes it, and he's just going to put what a great soldier Kiowa was. And then at the end, he changes it again. He's like, you know what? It's no one's fault. War is war. This is the kind of thing that happened. Kiowa's great at the end, right? So he kind of goes through a lot of this struggle. Does Jimmy Cross want to be in this war? No. How did he wind up there? How did he wind up a sergeant? He took ROTC, guys. He took ROTC in an effort to not be drafted, ended up going to the war anyways, and because he was ROTC, that put him a little bit above everybody else, and he becomes a sergeant. He has no desire to lead these people, no desire to do this, but this is what he's been assigned, and he has to. He prefers to see every person as an individual, or everybody as an individual, right, as human beings, but in the war, sergeants are taught to see all of their soldiers as the same. Everybody is a unit. We need to move forward. So they don't have these super connections, so that when things bad happen, it doesn't hurt as much, I guess. Also, just sort of a way to make sure that everybody is the same. Everybody is on the same playing field. Everything is the same, right? He doesn't like that idea either. So let's see. Azar, Norman Bowker, and Mitchell Sanders, they're kind of working together to locate Kiowa's body while all this is happening. And Azar keeps making these crude, nasty jokes, right? He's like, talk about irony. I bet he would just laugh, eating shit, classic irony, wasted in the waste. One more redskin baked in dirt. He keeps saying all these things, and they're crude, and they're not nice, but it's his way of dealing with death. He doesn't know how to deal with death, so he's making these off-color remarks over and over again. Then you've got Mitchell Sanders, who is pissed at Jimmy Cross. He's like, yeah, Jimmy Cross, he should have known better. He's the one who told us to camp out here on this field. How did he not know that this wasn't where we were supposed to be? He's leading us into death itself. So he's mad. Norman Bowker's like, listen, it's nobody's fault. It's just, this is war. It's what it is. It's nobody's fault. We just got to get through this. So they're searching. In the end, Norman Bowker is the one who finds Kiowa's body, and 5 of them try to pull the body out, but they can't because the mud is like sucking it back down in. So they have to dig him out, then they get him out of there. And once they have him out, they have a lot of different feelings. If you look on page 158, most of them feel relief, like, thank God this is over with. Now I can go sit down. Like, we found his body, good, we get to send his body home. We just want to sit. Some of them have this secret joy or giddiness. Of course, they feel bad for Kiowa, but they are happy that they survived last night. They're happy it's not them. And then there's this guilt feeling that goes along too, right? Like, they feel like, it wasn't them, right? Also, Azar feels guilty for making all those nasty jokes earlier, and he's like, I feel kind of like it's my fault, because I said all those things. I feel bad about it, even though I said it after the fact. It just stirred up emotions in him and makes him feel that way. Another person who's feeling guilty is this unnamed boy, who I think is the author, but that's based on what I said earlier, right? What were they doing when they started getting attacked? Well, they were sitting under the tent, so the person was sitting with Kiowa, and he's showing a picture of his girlfriend, Billy, and he decides to turn on his flashlight. And when he turns on his flashlight, seconds later, they get bombed. The flashlight gave their location away, and so this person feels probably some guilt here too. So hopefully this helped. Hopefully you found all the answers. You had a lot of notations to make. The final one, it says on page 177, it should have said on page 169, and you would have noted that if you got to the end. We're going to cross-list all these things that we could blame for Kiowa's death. I mean, he goes through tons of things. You could blame the war, the idiots who made the war, Kiowa for going to it, the rain, the river, the field, the mud, the climate, God, Karl Marx, the person who forgot to vote, the munitions maker, right? There's all these people that you could blame for this. And he says, in the field, though, the causes were immediate. A moment of carelessness or bad judgment or plain stupidity carried consequences that lasted forever. So he tells us that in the field, the blame goes to just a careless mistake, bad judgment in a moment, or a moment of stupidity. Norman Bowker tells us on the other page that who's to blame? He says nobody and everybody. Paradox, so you need to think about that and consider it and see what you can do with that information. So hopefully this helped you and you got all of your answers, and I will see you next time.